Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey folks, today we're going to be taking a look at Healthy Heart Hospital from Victory Point Games. This is a fully cooperative game where, as you might imagine, you might surmise, judging based on the title, you're running a hospital. You are all doctors and one administrator who is trying to help this Healthy Heart Hospital, which I think apparently has fallen on hard times, something to that effect, and make them a prestigious institution of medical practice. You're trying to get prestige points, you're trying to get money in order to improve your hospital and to make it easier to get prestige points. You'll hire staff, but more importantly, you're going to treat illnesses. There's patients constantly coming in. They're going to get progressively worse. You need to treat them to make sure that they don't die, or that has its own costs involved. And if you can treat them successfully, you'll get more money, more prestige, so on and so forth. Lots of other stuff to go over, so let me go ahead and give you as brief as possible of an overview. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think.
In Healthy Heart Hospital, 1 to 5 players work cooperatively together to help the struggling hospital stay strong and become a noteworthy medical center. You must take in patients and treat them successfully in order to gain both prestige points and the money necessary to improve the hospital. The game ends in 3 ways. When there are no ambulance cards left to draw, at which point you add up your points and compare them to a chart in the book to see how well you did. When there is no money left, which is considered a total failure. Or when there are too many dead patients to hide. At that point, you can still add up points, but you must subtract the number of tombstones that you earned. Each player but one gets a doctor card at the beginning of the game. Each doctor has different special abilities. They may make it easier to treat certain patients, cheaper to buy certain abilities, or let you use your actions in different ways than the other doctors. The remaining player becomes the administrator. They gain 2 different special abilities that are much more powerful than the other doctor's abilities, but they cannot usually participate in normal doctor duties like the other players. Those abilities may be things like treating one color of a cube as another for the duration of the round, or redrawing cubes, but they can only use one of these abilities per round. Each doctor gets 2 medical action tokens, unless stated otherwise. The administrator gets a special chief of staff token and an administrative token. These tokens let you take very specific actions during the game, which we'll cover in a minute. As for the rest of the setup, randomly select 5 bed tokens, which come in 1 2s and 3 4s, with a number on each side. Place them in the appropriate color wards and make sure they're on the 2 or 3 side. Then take the ward ability tokens, randomize them, and place them next to each ward, discarding the rest. These will modify the wards positively or negatively, like forcing you to heal the worst first, or giving you free actions upon curing someone. Shuffle the ambulance deck and make a new random deck of 18 cards. These will be used throughout the game to determine how many new patients enter the waiting room. 2 are drawn each round, and when they're gone, the game is over. Randomize the training markers and then flip 2 face up. These will give the doctors bonuses, like bonuses to heal certain patients or a prestige point boost. Then place 11 random hiring markers face down on the applicable track. These stay face down until you gain enough prestige, and once they're face up, you can hire them and gain their effects, like a human resources manager who reduces future hiring costs, or a lawyer who cuts your dead patient settlement costs in half. You start with no prestige and $5. There are also new room cards, which you'll leave off to the side for now, but you can build them and improve your hospital later. Finally, place all of the various disease cubes, which come in 5 colors that correspond to the different illnesses in the game, plus black cubes, into an opaque container, which is not provided by the game. The general rule for cubes and beds, which represent patients, is this. The number of cubes, or the number on the bed, determines the severity of the illness. If that number would ever reach 5, they are dead, unless you have an improved operating room or an emergency room, where they can be kept on life support until they reach level 6, which is dead. Every round of the game follows phases. In the ambulance phase, new patients come into the waiting room. You flip over 2 cards from the ambulance deck and put them on each side of the triage area. For each card, draw the required number of cubes from the container. Every one of the standard colors goes into an appropriate spot on that side. But if you draw a black cube, you must discard it and draw 2 more to replace it, and you keep doing this until you don't draw any more black cubes. If a 5th cube would ever be added, that patient immediately dies in the waiting room unless you've got something like an emergency room. Cubes will linger here and patients will get worse if they're not moved. After all this, you have to make the rounds of patients that have already been admitted. Designate each bedridden patient one at a time and draw a cube. If you draw the same color cube as the patient's illness, they get worse by 1, possibly killing them. Once again, if it's a black cube, draw 2 more to replace it. Phase 2 is the player phase. Each doctor and the administrator takes turns using one of their tokens to perform an action. Each token can only be used for certain actions. The medical token can be used to heal a patient, to build or upgrade an area that the doctor has a bonus for, and it can also be used to transfer a patient or conduct research, both of those abilities of which can also be done by an administrative token. The admin token only can also be used to build or upgrade any area, hire staff, assign staff, or train a doctor. Finally, only the administrator has the special Chief of Staff token, which can only be used to activate one and only one of their special actions each round. Let's break each action down. To heal a patient, you spend a token and designate a patient. This can be anywhere in the hospital, but it's easier in certain areas. Each area will tell you how many cubes you get to draw from the cup, and doctor bonuses may modify this. Every cube drawn that matches the patient illness color reduces their illness by 1. Every black cube increases their illness. Other cubes do nothing. For every level you treat, you gain $1 per level times the patient value of the area. If they're fully cured, you remove them from the board and you gain prestige points equal to 1 times that patient value. If they die, as usual, you must dispose of the body. Dead patients become tombstones that fill up any remaining tombstones in the game. You lose prestige points and whatever money is on the now covered tombstone, multiplied by the patient value where they died. Transferring patients lets you move them from one area to another. This might mean changing cubes into a bed of the appropriate number, or if you've built new rooms, they might become EKG meters. Any doctor can be trained with an admin token and $5 by taking a face-up training token or a random face-down token and assigning it even to yourself. However, if you've built a research lab, you can do this easier and cheaper with the conduct research action. It lets you flip over training tiles for an action or assign an already flipped over tile to a doctor for free. And the advanced research station will make this even easier. There are 10 areas you can build or upgrade in total. Each card is double-sided with the normal and advanced side. 5 of these are operating rooms, keyed to a colored illness, where patients can be transferred into EKGs and be monitored and healed, gaining you more money and prestige. There's also a clinic where non-critical patients can go to earn you money, and an emergency room where level 5 patients can be rushed from the triage to have one last shot at survival. To build or upgrade without a discount, you need $10. An administrative token and $5 can be used to hire a face-up staff member from the track. An admin token can also be used to reassign staff from one OR to another. After every player has used all of their tokens, it's time for the housekeeping phase. Some staff abilities happen, the job line is updated with new flips, emergency room patients die, cubes are restocked, and so on. When one of the game end conditions is met and it's not a total failure, you get to add up your points. Add your prestige together with half of your money rounded down, and that's your final score. Now, on to my final thoughts.
Now, I think Healthy Heart Hospital is a very interesting game, especially thematically. For me, the game didn't work. I did not have a fun time playing Healthy Heart Hospital at all. I've played it with multiple players, 5 as a matter of fact. I've played it solo, thinking that that might be a better experience and take care of some of the issues I'll get to in a second that I felt were very pronounced in the multiplayer version. But while it was slightly better, I still didn't have very much fun with the solo game either. And I'm just cutting to the quick here and telling you this up front, but I will also say that I understand why other people, especially people who are Eurogamers or who are just really, really invested in the theme, would be able to look past things like that, things that I am about to address, and still enjoy the game. So I'm not saying this is a bad or terrible game at all, but for me it was. That's just my personal opinion of it. So let's break it down a bit. We'll start off with the strong points, which I already said was the theme. And a lot of this makes sense. There is some weirdness with the theme for Healthy Heart Hospital. Why are you trying to hide bodies? Are you all like Dr. Nick Riviera? Or, just some aspects of it don't make total sense. Why is healing random? Like, you're highly trained doctors, presumably. Again, maybe you're Dr. Nick Riviera. So why do you randomly heal illnesses? It's almost like, thematically, I don't know. It feels like you're supposed to be in one of the wards. You should be curing whatever it is. One of them is actually mental illness, and yet you're drawing cubes of other colors Is that supposed to represent you grabbing the wrong pills or grabbing the wrong syringe? I don't know. So there is weirdness like that in the game, but overall, the theme works. Patients come in, you transfer them into beds, you transfer them to a life support unit where they become an EKG. There's all these little ancillary things like training your doctor, hiring staff. Having to hide the bodies is weird, but the whole thing with the tombstone markers and how you have to pay settlement costs and things like that is an interesting bit of theme they added in there. Overall complaint, though, about the theme is that eventually, once you've gone through the game, I would say even halfway through your first game, for me at least, and for some of the other people I played with, that theme started to slip away. Because eventually you realize that the game is just pushing cubes around. You move cubes from here, they become something else. They might go back to being cubes. They might go to becoming an EKG meter. Just a lot of cube pushing. That's kind of an overused term when you refer to Euro games, but that's how I felt here. So that took me out of the theme a bit, although I still think the theme is strong enough in this game. The length of the game was a huge problem for me. I felt like the game just went on and on and on, and also there lacked a sense of urgency. I wouldn't necessarily mind a super long cooperative game. I like Robinson Crusoe, and that is pretty long, most games of it that I've played. But when you get to a certain point in Healthy Heart Hospital, I think you can either feel like we're going to win or we're going to die. And if you're going to die, well, it might happen quick. You might run out of money very quickly as you lose prestige points, as you lose money, things like that. But also at a certain point, I kind of felt like, in some games of what I played, okay, we're going to win. It's just going to happen. We're just kind of going through the motions here. We could have this really disastrous turn of events, but chances are we're doing well enough now. We have enough money, enough prestige points, and we're like maybe 2/3 of the way through the game that we're just kind of going through the motions at this point. And that's a long set of motions. The first game this we played, granted, a teaching game, went on for 4 hours. Okay, that's extreme. Second game I played with other people was still 3 hours. The solo game I played was a little bit quicker. It's hard for me to judge because I'm taking my time going in and out of the room, things like that. Maybe 2 hours. It's a long game, and I don't know that the game is exciting enough to maintain that. Component-wise, it's a victory point game, which unfortunately means the components as a whole are substandard. You have paper mat for the board. You have cubes, I guess, which are fine. There's no container for the cubes. Even a pouch would have been great. I don't know why they couldn't at least do that. That's kind of weird, but it's easy enough to get, I suppose. And of course, the cards are all cut to wrong sizes and things like that, which isn't as huge a deal as it is in games like Trieste from Victory Point Games. But overall, aside from the artwork, I do like the artwork, I will say that. It has a good nostalgic feel to it for the kind of hospital I presume this is trying to present itself as. One of the big issues I have with the game is the players and how each of them has a different power, which is great. I love variable player powers. In fact, I think it's almost a necessity for many games nowadays because we've simply evolved to that point. But I also think that the player powers are not that distinctive. Yes, you do have things the other players can't do. You can heal something better. You can get a discount the other players can't get on building a building. And yet, most of the time, you may not even use your power during the whole round. Oftentimes, you use at least part of your special powers each round. But sometimes you just feel like all the other players. You do not feel that distinct. It feels like everyone's kind of doing the same thing, which is part of the reason why I thought the game might be better solo, because it just feels like we're all just making the motions, which really leads to an alpha player problem. I'm curious how many people have run into that situation. Maybe it was just our group, where it's just like, well, yeah, this is the obvious thing to do. You do this, you do this, you do this, because we're all doing the same thing, essentially. Even the administrator has a super special power, or two powers, they choose one each round, and decide which one to use. And that's great. You feel like you have a lot of agency there, and you can also settle disputes, but that never happens, really. And yet, you use your power, and that's that. You have one other token, the administrative token, which one of the doctors actually gets one of those too, so you don't even feel that different than the other players. And then you can't ever heal anyone. I think maybe one of the administrators has a special power like that, but it just makes you feel not as special as you probably should feel. And then, there's other things. I mentioned that there's just an overall lack of urgency to the game. I never felt like I was excited on the edge of my seat, like, running a hospital like a hospital show, things like that. And the end game is weird too, because you are really just trying to get as many points as possible, and the only way that you're going to lose is if you run out of money. And then there's a weird thing where, okay, you could just kill too many people, but still count up points. I just don't know. I guess I would have liked more distinct end game things, which really makes it feel like this is a cooperative game as seen by a Eurogamer, which I want to stress is fine if that's your thing. But I went into it with a different expectation. I was like, all right, strong theme. I hope there's exciting edge-of-your-seat gameplay to back it up. Didn't really happen. There's not really a comparable game that I've played, but if you want to think of one, I guess Pandemic. Pandemic is very different, okay? I don't want to make a direct comparison, but something about that game is much smoother. You easily take your actions. You feel different and distinct from the other players. Sometimes you do the same things the other players do. Other times, a lot of the time, you're using a very distinct power that changes the game, and if that character's not in that game, the game feels very different. I played this game 3 times, and I feel like it doesn't matter which allotment of doctors we used, it was the same game. Even with the solo game, I still felt this doesn't feel that much different. It just feels like there's not other people around me. So, thematically, it mostly works. And there's going to be a certain subset of people, especially Eurogamers, who are going to love the strategic aspect of just moving from one thing to here, the resource management aspect and resource efficiency. But I never felt invested in the game. It really just felt like we were going through the motions, the very long motions, to get it over with. So I'm really sorry to say that, because there was a ton of potential here for me personally, and I was very excited for it. But it just didn't work. I don't know what else to say about it, but I don't think it's a terrible game. I think there is an audience for it. You kind of gotta figure that out for yourself. So that is Healthy Heart Hospital from Victory Point Games. A pass for me, maybe not for you.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.